Okay, demand. Generally, demand, supply, and market equilibrium are probably the key topics for you. And this analysis, demand supply analysis, is super powerful. As long as you understand what demand and supply curves are and how they shift and how their shifts affect equilibrium values of prices and quantities, you will be able to apply this to any market. You will be able to understand what happens to petrol, for example, why we have a deficit at the moment and it's impossible to fill in your car in the last week. You will be able to analyze the value of currencies and forecast how exchange rates might fluctuate, whether the pound will increase in value or whether a dollar or euro will become more expensive. You will be able to analyze unemployment rates and wages in the country. You will be able to analyze most of the markets and forecast what will happen to prices, which is a very, very important skill for you as a professional or even in your personal life, because you will be able to understand what is happening and adjust your decisions accordingly, right? So this is what you really, really need to focus on. And demand, supply, and equilibrium will be the main subjects of your first test. So please make sure that you study this really well. Hands up if you've covered demand and supply lectures already. Not seminars, lectures. Okay, good. So most of the class, but not everyone. Please make sure that when you come to seminar, you watch the lectures, because if you don't, you won't be able to participate in the seminar fully. Moreover, because every week we study a new topic, you won't really have time to catch up. So this week we'll have another topic. If you haven't watched it previously, the amount of undone work will accumulate and you will become overwhelmed. So please make sure that you schedule all of these activities and finish everything every week. Yes, you watch the lectures and next week we have seminars based on this topic. Yes, so for example, last week there were lectures on demand and supply, and this week we have seminars. Because yes, next week we'll have market equilibrium. Yes, absolutely correct. So this week we study market equilibrium in lectures, right? This is the main subject of this week's lectures. We cover them in seminars. Why this is done in this way? Because seminars start as early as Monday. My first seminar session, Monday, 9 o'clock in the morning with one of the groups. There is no way students would cover all of the material for this week, plus done their reading, plus done their homework before 9 o'clock on Monday. It's impossible. So basically, that's why I need to lag the seminars by 1 week, so that the students finish a particular topic in 1 week, study everything, and in seminars they practice next week. Right? So because we've covered demand previously, now we finish it in seminars, and you won't have time to come back to this because next week we'll do something else. So for those of you who missed this, demand basically is the relationship between price and quantity. And there is a very quick video lecture. I think I'll just play it for you to be able to understand what is happening. Let me just play the quick lecture.
Last week we have studied the law of demand. We have learned that demand is the relationship between price of a product and quantity which consumers are willing to purchase at this particular price. So when we try to draw the demand curve, we plot price along vertical axis, quantity along horizontal axis, and then demand curve is the downward sloping line, which shows us that as price drops, quantity demanded will be higher. So as we move from some point A on the demand curve towards point B, as price drops, quantity demanded will increase. This represents the law of demand. Also, we have learned the difference between quantity demanded and demand itself. Quantity demanded shows the specific number of items which is purchased at each and every price. So, for example, when price is shown by level P1, quantity demanded will be equal to Q1. This is particular number of items which will be purchased at this particular price. For example, if a price of an iPhone is equal to £800, there will be, let's say, 10 customers who are willing to purchase this particular product. As price drops from P1 to P2, for example, to £400, quantity demanded will increase, and new quantity demanded will be shown by this new number. Let's say 50 customers will be willing to purchase this product, let's say, per hour. So quantity demanded is a specific quantity purchased at each individual price. while demand represents the whole relationship, the whole demand curve, which shows the relationship between all possible prices and all possible quantities. We have also learned the factors which will shift the demand curve to the right and to the left. As price changes, we'll have a movement along demand curve, up or down. If we will experience a change in
focus. Some students asked me a question, what is the difference between demand and quantity demanded? What's the difference between shift of the curve and movement along the curve? So this is the key. Quantity demanded, it's just one specific amount. It's a point on the demand curve for each and every price. When price is 100, quantity is 10. Quantity demanded is one number. Demand is the whole relationship between all possible quantities from 0 to infinity or to whatever number for all possible prices. What is also important is that when price changes, there will be a change in quantity demanded. In other words, we'll move along the same demand curve. Whenever price drops, quantity demanded will increase. We'll move from point A to point B. Whenever price goes up, quantity demanded will drop. We'll move from point B to point A. When price changes, there will be a movement along the curve. When there will be a change in any other factor apart from the price, the demand curve will shift. Demand curve always shifts whenever there are changes in the market. Any other change apart from price. Please remember this. This is the key. Price change, movement along the curve. Any other change, shift in the curve. This is the key, and we'll focus on this during today's seminar.
For example, if consumer income increases when income goes up, it means that consumers will be willing to purchase more units at each and every price. In other words, every single point on the demand curve will shift to the right, which means that our new demand curve will be represented by this new blue demand line. So at higher income, regardless of the price, regardless of whether it's high or low, there will be more units purchased. Demand curve will shift to the right. Well, if income drops, it means that at each and every price, consumers will be willing to purchase less items. In other words, every single point on the demand curve will shift to the left, and our new demand curve will now be shown by this green line. So generally, there are different determinants of demand. First and most important one is income. But apart from income, there will be other factors which can shift the demand curve. This includes prices of other goods, complements and substitutes, consumer tastes, population size, and so on. So if you struggle with any of these concepts, please make sure that you review the previous lecture.
Right. This summary is available on Moodle. So if you are stuck with certain lecture, if you haven't finished a lecture before coming to seminar, at least look through this. These are just literally a few minutes summaries of previous lectures. Watch them before the seminar. Okay, I will try to record them for every single topic. Let's move to our first exercise. So this is what you'll need to do. You have these tables in your seminar workbooks. So this will be page 6. So this table asks you to show what will happen to a specific market as a result of certain event. For example, how will demand for London Underground tickets will change if congestion charge will increase from 8 to 15 pounds. When you travel to London, if you travel by car, you'll need to pay congestion charge. It used to be 8 pounds, for example, now it's 15. How will this change affect the demand for underground tickets? Will it be a change in the quantity demanded or demand itself? Just write this down here. So is it a movement along the curve or shift in the demand curve? If it's a movement, will it be a higher quantity or lower quantity, expansion or contraction in quantity demanded? If it's a shift, will it be increase or decrease in demand? Will there be a shift to the right or to the left? First of all, identify whether it's a movement or a shift, and then whether it's up or down. Okay? For those of you who don't know, when you need to travel to a city center in London, when you need to travel by car, when you enter a specific central zone, you will be charged a congestion charge. in addition to your parking, in addition to all other costs of using your car, in addition to petrol. So strictly speaking, congestion charge increases the cost of your traveling. If you travel by car, you need to pay a congestion charge. Previously, you used to pay 8, now you need to pay 15. What does this mean? It means that it becomes more expensive to travel by car. What do you think? Is it likely to increase usage of cars or reduce? Reduce, why? Yes, it's more expensive. That is why you would try, or not necessarily you, but maybe some other people, some customers are likely to switch to an alternative method of transport. If you need to get to the city center, you can get there in many different ways. You can walk, you can cycle, you can use a bus, you can use a train, you can use a tube, or you can use your car. If car becomes substantially more expensive, you're likely to switch to alternative ways of transportation. How is it likely to affect demand for underground tickets? Are people likely to use this more frequently? It will shift to where? To the right, absolutely correct. So demand is likely, demand for underground tickets is likely to increase. So if we focus on this case one, demand is likely to increase, which means that our demand curve will shift to the right. Why is that? Because people are likely to travel more frequently or using tube at any given price. So for example, let's say previously prices varied. For example, on peak, during peak time, you would be charged, let's say, £5 per single trip. This is the price. And at this price, there would be, let's say, 100 customers traveling from a particular station per hour. And then there were off-peak prices, let's say £2. And at this time of the day, there would be, let's say, 500 customers traveling. This is the original situation before there were any changes to the congestion charge. But now people switch to using tube more frequently, and we have an increasing number of customers at any given price level. So regardless of whether we talk about morning rush hour when tickets are expensive, or in the evening when prices are cheaper off peak, in any case there will be more customers traveling. So for example, instead of 100, we will have 300 traveling in the morning because they're not using cars anymore. And in the afternoon, let's say we'll have 800 people instead of 500. This will happen for any previous price level. Regardless of the prices, there will be more customers. So quantity demanded at each and every price level will now be higher, which means that our new demand curve will shift to the right. So what do we write here? Is it a movement or shift? It's a shift. Why is it a shift? Because it's a change in some other factor apart from the price. Price of tickets themselves hasn't changed. It's still the same. It's a change in some other factor. That is why we'll have a shift. Is it an increase in demand or reduction in demand? It's an increase in demand. So we'll have a higher demand now. It's a shift to the right. Higher demand implies that demand curve shifts to the right, so higher demand, and lower demand, it's a shift to the left. So the higher the demand is, the further away from the origin the demand curve will shift. If it shrinks, it will move closer to zero, closer to the origin. So that's how you tackle this question. So you need to identify whether it's a movement or a shift first, and then you need to decide whether it's an increase or reduction. Let's spend maybe 10 minutes. Try to do as many as you can during these 10 minutes. Try to do it yourself now. So I've explained one. Let's have a look at number 2. Demand for alcohol in Edinburgh pubs, how it's likely to be affected due to this change to the market. This is an external event which happens. Local council introduces a ban on happy hours and 2-for-1 deals. What does this mean? This means that previously pubs where you were able to run certain promotions to make their alcohol cheaper. Now they can't. So strictly speaking, previously you were able to pay, let's say, £2 per pint of beer during certain times of the day. And at this price, you were buying, let's say, 5 pints of beer per month, right? Or you've made certain number of trips, and during these visits to pubs, you purchased 5 pints of beer. This was the quantity demanded at this particular price. Now, you are unable to use this promotion because you've been asked to pay the full price of, let's say, £5. So there are no happy hours any longer, no 2-for-1 deals. So now you need to pay full price, which is £5. How is it likely to affect your demand? Are you likely to buy the same amount as before? What do you think? You buy less. Why do you buy less? It costs more because of the law of demand. The more expensive it is, the less customers will be willing to purchase it, right? So at this new price, maybe you will only be willing to purchase 2 pints of beer, or you will visit pubs less frequently. In other words, because it's a change in price of our product, there will be a movement along the same demand curve. Demand relationship remains the same, and we will experience a movement along the same demand curve. We will simply purchase less. We will only experience a reduction in quantity demanded due to higher price. So we'll move from point A to some point B along the same demand curve. Demand relationship doesn't change. So what do we have here? It's a movement. Is it expansion or contraction? It's a contraction. We have lower quantity demanded. It drops because of higher prices. So that's how we've tackled question number 2 here. You don't complete this because there is no shift. You complete this column for a movement if you've identified that this is a movement, and if it's a shift, then you would need to complete this column. It's one or another, right? So it will be like that. Any questions here? Okay, next one. Question 3. Demand from the UK for foreign holidays in Turkey. How will this be affected due to a fall in average income? Right, so what do we have here? Consumers now are earning less. Income drops. Is it likely to increase demand for holidays or reduce it? Reduce it. Why? Yeah, they don't have as much disposable income as previously, right? So they cannot afford to purchase as many holidays as before. So if we sketch a graph, it will look like this. This was a certain demand for Turkish holidays, and demand existed at different price levels. So some customers were willing to purchase very expensive holidays, like VIP packages, all-inclusive packages, £2,000 per person. And there were, let's say, 10 customers who purchased this. Some customers were buying budget holidays, which cost, let's say, £200 per person. And there were, let's say, 100 customers who were buying this type of holidays. And there was some mid-range as well. So let's say £600 per person. So there was demand at each and every price level. There were some number purchased, but now income drops. And because income drops, income is lower, consumers are willing to purchase less. Some people can't afford it. Some people prefer to travel to another destination. Some people will not be able to afford holidays at all. They will stay at home and so on. And there will be lower demand at each and every price level. So some people decide that they cannot afford the VIP package anymore. Some people will buy less mid-range holidays. And there will be some people who won't be able to afford even these cheaper holidays. As a result, for the same price level, prices of holidays didn't change, but there will be less customers willing to purchase this, so our new demand curve will now be lower. Consumer income will affect the location of the demand curve. The higher the income, the further away, so we'll move in this direction. The higher the income, the higher the demand will be. When income drops, our demand curve will shift closer to the origin, and now will be shown by this blue line. So we'll have a shift here, and we'll have a reduction in demand. So it will be a movement to the left. Any questions here? No? And so on. Similarly, you analyze all other questions. Let's have a look at something different. Demand for hammers, demand for potatoes. Expectations. Let's have a look at this one. How expectations can affect demand. How demand for large TV sets, 60-inch TV sets, is likely to be affected by the expectation of a recession next year. What do you think? Left. Why? Absolutely correct. So expectations is a factor which will affect both demand and supply. In this case, demand. So what happens? Recession or expectation of a recession, or negative expectations. Let's just call them negative expectations. We expect that next year our economy will be doing really badly. We are likely to lose jobs possibly, or will suffer from redundancies, or our wages likely to be cut down, or will not get a bonus. In any case, our disposable income is likely to be lower. And if we expect this to happen, probably it's not a good time to splash out on luxuries, because apparently large TV sets is not something which you really need or can't live without. If you expect that maybe next year you will struggle to feed your children, probably it's not a good good time to buy these TV sets, these luxuries, and you can definitely postpone this purchase or cancel it or just live without it. There is no issues living without a new large TV set. You can buy a cheaper one, a smaller one, or just play various videos on your smartphones or laptops, etc. It's definitely not a necessity, and you can live without it. And as a result, when you have negative expectations, demand for this sort of products is likely to reduce. So let me just draw this. Our new demand is likely to be lower. And similarly, positive expectations are likely to shift demand to the right. For example, let's imagine that you've graduated from BCU. It's June in summer 2024 when you've graduated. You've just passed your exams and you've actually got a job offer, and you start your new job in London in September. It's still June. You haven't got any income just yet. You are not working just yet, but you expect that starting from September, you will have a nice, good, well-paid job. Let's say 30 grand per year. This is what you'll get. Are you likely to start spending more straight away or not? Will you still spend the same amount as before? Will your consumption pattern will remain the same over the summer? What do you think? You wouldn't spend any more before you get actually paid, right? Yeah, that's good. That's a really good approach, to be honest, because you don't know what can happen. Maybe this company will go bankrupt over summer or whatever happens. Yes, but strangely enough, many people won't be like you. So it's very good to take precautional approach with your money, with your finances, but many people will start splashing out straight away. They will spend on credit cards because they know or they hope that everything will be very good. And that's quite rational as well, because you might need to buy a new car. You might need to relocate to London, which means that well in advance, right, to secure your apartment, because you will need to live in London and it's more expensive. There is no point staying in Birmingham, even if it's cheaper, if you need to be in London by a certain time. You might prefer to relocate earlier, start spending before getting paid. You might need to get the new wardrobe. You might need to buy some business suites and so on, new watches, etc. You might need to buy a laptop. Many people will start spending before this happens. Or if you are promised a bonus on Christmas, for example, right, at the end of December, you might start spending this money in November. You might book holidays, for example, before you get paid. It's normal. This is how many people respond. So negative expectations, even if nothing happened just yet, this recession is likely to take place, is expected next year only, but people cut down their expenditure right now. And similarly, if they have positive expectations, their consumption level is likely to increase well ahead before they get paid. Expectations can affect demand. Right, another example of expectations, demand for bricklayers, this final one. Construction companies report an upturn in expected sales and new house building. How is it likely to affect demand for bricklayers? What do you think? We expect an increase in sales and new house building in the future. Is it likely to affect demand for bricklayers? Yes, why? Yes, absolutely correct. So positive expectations will shift demand. For this particular industry, expectations of future expectations, increase in sales is a positive thing, right? So this is likely to increase demand because bricklayers are needed in order to build these houses. If we expect houses to be in demand, right, we need to build them beforehand. So that's why demand for bricklayers is likely to increase. Maybe they will be offered higher wages. Maybe they will be asked to work overtime. So generally, it's a good news for this particular industry. So in both cases, we will have a shift in the curve. This is the effect of expectations, right? Expectations. It will be a shift. In the case of a negative shift, do we have a shift here in the last column? Yes, it will be a reduction in demand, and here there will be an increase in demand. So negative expectations, and here we'll have a positive expectations. Okay, any questions? So we've analyzed the effect of income, the effect of expectations. Let's have a look at the effect of population, this one. Demand for rented properties in London. Let's just draw it here. Population size. Government announces a fall in the number of migrants living and working in London. Brexit. Many European citizens just moved to their home countries, which basically reduced the number of immigrants living in London. How is it likely to affect demand for rented property? Decrease, yeah? Yeah, less people, less customers, less demand. That's just easy as that. Your customers just moved away. If you used to be a landlord, many of your tenants just moved to their home countries, like Ukraine, Poland, Romania, or whatever. So there will be a shift, not a movement, because price of rented properties, the rent itself hasn't changed. It's a shift, and it's a lower demand. It's a shift towards the origin. This is how population affects demand. Another factor, very important factor, which will affect demand is the price of other goods, substitutes and complements. In our lecture, we've covered these types of goods, substitutes and complements. And in your exam, there will be quite a few questions based on this. What are substitutes? Substitutes are the goods which you can consume instead of your own. So the goods which satisfy the same need. So these are basically rivals products. So rivals products. For example, if you're hungry, you can have many different things for your lunch. You can have a pack of crisps and a Coke. You can have a sandwich. You can have a pizza. You can have a kebab. You can have a chocolate bar, and so on. So these are substitute products. So basically, you can switch from one to another, which means that when one of these products becomes suddenly more expensive, you will switch to an alternative. For example, you used to have a cup of coffee and a piece of cake in the canteen here downstairs when you stayed here for the whole day at university. But suddenly today, all the cakes are very expensive, like £5 a piece. So just too expensive. So what will you do? You'll probably buy something else, a panini or sandwich or something. Which means that when price of a substitute product goes up or down, demand for your conventional, for your normal product will be affected. And similarly, complements are also another type of goods, but these are the goods which are consumed together. Consumed together. The easiest example would be car and petrol. You don't really need a petrol unless you have a car. And you cannot run a car unless you buy petrol for it. Otherwise, it's just useless. There is nothing you can do with it, right? These are consumed together. And prices of complementary products will also affect your product. Because, for example, if cars become very, very expensive, it's likely to reduce demand for petrol. People will be using less cars. They will be buying less of them because they are too expensive. People can't afford them now. And as a result, demand for petrol will also be affected. They will buy less petrol. They don't need as much petrol because cars are so expensive. So prices of other goods will affect demand. What is important is that these factors will cause a shift in the curve. Also, we talk about prices. These are prices of other goods. It's not the variable which is located here along our vertical axis. Only change in this variable, in our price, in our market, will cause a movement along the curve. When we talk about prices of any other goods, it will cause a shift in the curve. Shift in demand curve when prices of complements and substitutes change. Let's have a look at an example. Demand for new cars. Have a look. We experience a rise in the average price of second-hand cars. How is it likely to affect demand for new cars? Let's just scroll down. Let's draw two different markets, new cars and second-hand cars. I'll even use different colors to illustrate that these are actually different markets with different demand. There is certain demand for second-hand cars. Let's say at the moment the price, let's start here. At the moment the price of a second-hand car is £5,000. And there are, let's say, 100 customers buying second-hand cars per day. On another hand, there is certain demand for new cars and the average price is now more expensive, let's say £20,000. And there are, let's say, 40 cars, new cars purchased each day. So that's the initial situation. We are located at point A on each of these graphs, in each of these different markets. And now we are asked what will happen to new cars when price of second-hand cars goes up, right? Let's just see, let's just check. Yes, price of a second-hand cars goes up, rise in the price. When price goes up, it implies that we will move along the same demand curve for second-hand cars. Now new price will be, let's say, £15,000. How is it likely to affect the market of second-hand cars? Absolutely correct. Will it reduce demand or quantity demanded for second-hand cars? Quantity demanded, absolutely correct. So we experience a reduction in quantity demanded here in this particular market will move along the same demand curve, right? Will simply move to another point B on the same demand curve. Let's say now at a new price, there will be only 30 customers buying them because the gap between a second-hand car price and a new price is not too big. It's not more substantial. There will be still some people buying these expensive second-hand cars because maybe they simply can't afford the new one. They simply don't have 20 grand. They can afford 15,000 pounds, but they cannot afford 20. So they will still be buying second-hand cars because it's still cheaper, right? But many people will switch to new cars because the difference between them is not that significant, which means that now the new cars will be purchased more frequently at the same price. So the new demand curve will now be located to the right, shift in demand curve. Here we've had a reduction in quantity demanded, but here we'll experience a shift in the demand curve. Price of a substitute product has affected demand for our product. We are selling new cars, but because of a change in the relevant market, which is related to ours, we've been affected too. Their prices have increased, and as a result, we've got some of their customers who benefited from this, right? So this is an illustration of how substitute products can affect our product. So here we'll have a shift, and it will be a shift to the right. So demand will increase, shift to the right. Another example of complementary products will be this one. Memory cards and digital cameras. These are complements. This was number 4 was example of the substitutes, how they affect demand, and example 5 will be complements, how complementary products will be affected. Fall in price of digital cameras. So cameras and memory cards are consumed together. You cannot really take photos using a digital camera unless you have some storage, unless you can store your photos somewhere. You need to buy a memory card to go with your digital camera. It can come with the package, it can be included with the camera, or sometimes you can buy it separately. But these are 2 separate products with separate markets, right? And when digital cameras become cheaper, what does it mean? Is it likely to increase demand for memory cards or reduce it? Increase. People buy more digital cameras, they need more memory cards. People will buy more memory cards at previous prices, simply because they're buying more cameras. So again, it will be a shift because price of memory cards was not affected, and it will be a shift to the right. So higher quantity will now be purchased at each and every price. Right, demand for Hummers. Hummers are large cars which consume a lot of petrol. At the moment, we experience rising prices for crude oil in the world market. How rising oil prices are likely to affect demand for Hummers? It's likely to go down. Why is that? Because oil is expensive. Oil is the resource which is used in the production of petrol. When oil becomes more expensive, petrol is likely to go up in price. Right? Petrol is very expensive, which means that it will be very expensive to run this car, just to use it, because you need lots of petrol to run this large, huge car. You're likely to switch to a smaller car, which doesn't consume as much petrol as this one. So demand for Hummers is likely to decline. Is it a movement or a shift? It's a shift because price of Hummers hasn't changed. Now we'll buy less Hummers at each and every price, simply because people will prefer another type of cars. Or if renewable energy becomes cheaper, if electricity, if it becomes cheaper to charge your electric car, you are likely to start buying more electric cars and less petrol ones. So demand for petrol cars will decline due to declining cost of electricity, right? So this is how different goods in different markets can affect each other, right? This was covered in the lecture, it was explained in detail, so you need to be aware how price of substitutes and complements will affect your demand. So, which factors will shift the demand curve? First and most important factor is income. Higher income, higher demand, shift to the right. Lower income, lower demand, shift to the left. Tastes and fashion trends, things like that. If the product is in fashion, if it's trendy, if there is a research published stating that this particular product is good for your health, or because it's fashionable, or because it's a celebrity endorsed advertising campaign, the demand will go up. So basically, that's the reason why promotions are taking place, why companies advertise their products to increase demand. Successful promotion implies higher demand at the same price, right? Because the product is fashionable. So tastes will affect demand. If product goes out of fashion, demand will be lower. Income, tastes, expectations, as we've covered here, and also prices of other goods, substitutes, and complements. Any questions based on this? No? Okay, that's fine. The rest you can do at home. Please make sure that you complete the rest of these exercises just for additional practice. The answers are available on Moodle. You will be able to check the solutions. So there is a solutions, this one, where everything will be shown. Just make sure that you do this at home and then check against this. Right, now, next question. Let's have a look at this one. How will the market demand curve for a normal good shift in each of the following cases? Spend a few minutes to do this, please. Price of a substitute falls. For example, we talk about pizza and sandwiches, right? Pizza is our product and sandwiches is our substitute. And price of a substitute now falls, so price of a sandwich is now lower, which means that quantity of sandwiches purchased is likely to be higher. People will buy more sandwiches. In fact, they will switch away from consumption of pizzas towards sandwiches, which are now cheaper, which means that quantity of pizzas will now drop. In other words, for the same price of pizzas is unchanged, is the same, which means that if we sketch a diagram for pizzas, demand for pizzas, now it will shift to the left. There will be less pizzas purchased at each and every price. Regardless of the price, it's now lower. People switch away from consumption of pizzas towards cheaper sandwiches. So as a result, demand curve for pizzas will shift to the left, closer to the origin. Population rises. Again, pizzas. We used to consume, let's say, 100 pizzas, and now we have a higher population. Will the demand still be the same? No. Will it go up or down? It will go up because, so shift to the right, because more consumers means more demand. So for example, in Birmingham in summer, there are less students because they move away, they live with their parents, they move to their home countries. In September, they all come here. So there will be higher demand by students for sandwiches, for pizzas, for stationery, for books, for student accommodation, and so on. The higher the population, the higher the number of consumers, the higher the demand will be. For any other factors being equal, regardless of the price, demand will be higher. So there will be a shift to the right towards higher quantities. Next one, tastes shift away from the good. It's likely to reduce demand. There will be a shift to the left because people don't want to buy this product anymore. There will be less purchased at each and every price. So again, if we sketch a graph, regardless of the price, there will be less purchased, less quantity. Quantity is along horizontal axis. Now, for each and every price, regardless of whether it's high or low, less quantity will be purchased. It's a shift to the left. And next one, price of a complementary good falls. Complementary goods, again, when you ask a question like this, come up with an example. Just imagine an example and analyze an example. It will be easier for you to understand. Some students struggle with abstract terms. If you are like this, if you cannot really understand the general concepts, come up with an example. So what is price of a complementary goods? Petrol and cars. Price of petrol is now cheaper. Price of a complementary good drops. How will it affect demand for cars? It's cheaper to run, so now we can actually travel for cheaper. It costs us cheaper to go from point A to point B because petrol is very cheap at the moment. It's less expensive, price is lower. Are we likely to use cars more frequently? Yes, we'll spend more time in the car, we'll travel more miles, demand for cars is likely to increase for the same price of cars. So this implies an increase in the demand for cars. It's a shift to the right. When it's cheaper to buy complementary products, we'll buy more of this product and we'll buy more of our product as well. Shift to the right. Good becomes more expensive. What will happen? What do you think? Shift to the left because it's more expensive. Do you agree? Everyone got the same? Shift to the left? No shift. Yes, correct. It's no shift because it's a movement along. Yes, so please pay attention. Don't forget about this. When the good becomes more expensive, it means that we are moving along the same demand curve. Price goes up, quantity drops, right? This little graph here on the side. But there is no shift. It's a movement along the curve because we talk about change in price for our good. When the price of our good changes, it's a movement along, no shift. When anything else changes, including prices of other goods, it will be. Any questions? Great. Let's go through exercise 3. We analyze here demand for wheat. Demand for wheat. It's a market of wheat. What happens if people consume more bread? Is it likely to increase demand or reduce it? Go up. Yes. Will we have a movement or a shift? It's a shift. Why is it a shift? Absolutely, because the price is the same. The price of wheat hasn't changed. This is a market of wheat. Price of wheat hasn't changed, but people consume more bread, and as a result, demand for wheat will go up. So the new demand will be shown by this red line, right? And it's a shift because price of wheat hasn't changed. However, have a look what happens. As a result of this higher consumption of bread, we will have a new equilibrium point. That's a movement to the next level. We'll move from the equilibrium at point A to point B. What do I mean by equilibrium? Equilibrium is a point where demand crosses supply. This is what we study this week in our lectures. But you can have the idea from this graph already. Originally, we've been at point A. As a result of this shift in demand, new equilibrium will now be established at point B. Right? People consume more bread, so the demand for wheat has increased. It has shifted to the right. As a result, our equilibrium will move from point A to point B. And what does this mean? This means that as a result of this shift, there will be, of course, higher quantity of wheat consumed, not only high amount of bread, but higher quantity of wheat, and importantly, price of wheat, equilibrium price, will now be higher. So generally, as a result of high consumption of bread, quantity demanded will go up and price will go up too. But this price of wheat goes up because of the shift in demand. It's not a movement alone, it's a shift in the demand caused by other factors. Another question, rice and potatoes fall in price. When rice and potatoes are actually our substitute goods. These are substitutes for bread. These are carbs. You can eat, I don't know, some porridge, you can eat rice, you can eat potatoes or bread. These are all carbs. You can have a piece of bread or you can have a bowl of rice. When they become cheaper, people will start buying more rice and potatoes consumed. And as a result of this, less bread purchased. If we consume less bread, it will shift demand downwards. So the new demand will be located closer to the origin, which also implies that our equilibrium will move from point A to point B. And as a result of this shift in the consumption of bread, people prefer to buy rice and potatoes, they buy less bread, and as a result of this, quantity of bread will now be lower, or of wheat, sorry, and price of wheat will now be lower too. People buy less bread, and as a result, they don't need as much wheat as before. So quantity drops and price drops as well. Product becomes less popular because people buy a substitute product instead. This is an illustration of how substitute products affect our product. Again, this is key. Understanding how demand and supply curves shift will be key to your understanding how the market will respond. As long as you understand that demand curve shifts to the right or to the left due to certain factors, you will be able to forecast how this will affect prices. This is important if your business is producing a certain product, desks, for example, or smartphones, or petrol, or water, or whatever. You will know what to expect, how much consumers will be willing to purchase, more or less. Are they likely to increase their consumption? How your sales are likely to be affected due to changes in the market environment. So again, this is key. Please make sure that you do this. And the final exercise, this question gives you some information on prices and quantities demanded and supplied at each and every price. You simply need to sketch a diagram. You'll need to sketch demand. So if you look at the first two lines, price and quantities demanded, this will be your demand curve. Demand curve shows the relationship between prices and quantity demanded. So this will be your blue line. Right? If you look at the first line and the final line and line 3, you will see your supply relationship. Supply shows the relationship between prices and quantities supplied, how much producers are willing to supply at each and every price. So if you take line 1 and line 3, you will have your supply. If you plot these points, you will get a red line, right? And the first question asks you, what is the equilibrium price? And obviously you can see it from the graph. It's a point where demand crosses supply. So this is your equilibrium. And if you just label the equilibrium price, it happens to be 280 pounds. This is where demand crosses supply. This is the point where quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. That's the definition of an equilibrium. And in this case, it will be 600 units. So for this particular demand and supply, there will be 600 units sold, 600 tons per week, at a price equal to 280. In fact, you can find out this from the table itself. You don't even need to draw the graph for this, because you know that equilibrium is a point where demand equals to supply, where quantity demanded is the same as quantity supplied. If price is 120, you will see that there will be a gap between demand and supply. There will be a lot which consumers are willing to purchase, 725, but only 225 tons provided. So many customers will go without a product. This is not an equilibrium. Consumers will be unsatisfied. There will be a shortage in the market. When price is, let's say, 200 pounds, slightly higher, there is still a gap between demand and supply, quantity demanded and quantity supplied. So this is still a shortage of products in the market. And in fact, there is only one price where quantity demanded is equal to supply. And this is our market equilibrium. Market equilibrium. Market clears at this particular price. Quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied. It's equal to 600 tons. And this one happens when price is equal to 280. If we consider any other prices, again, there will be a gap between quantities demanded and supplied. And in this case, there will be a surplus on the market. You can have a look at when price is 400, for example, there will be a very large quantity provided which suppliers are willing to sell, 1,300, but there will be only 425 which consumers are willing to purchase. There will be too many products in the market. So basically, there will be only single price when quantity demanded equals to supply. This is our equilibrium. Next question. Suppose the government fixes a maximum price of 200 pounds per ton. What will be the effect? This is a very interesting question, and you will get a question like this in your test, all of you, because it's a question based on deficits and surpluses. You will be asked to identify what happens at a certain price, whether there is a deficit or a surplus, and how big it is. That's how you tackle this question. 200 pounds, that's the actual price which is set by the government. It's not an equilibrium price. 280 was an equilibrium. I will always label equilibrium with a star. P star is an equilibrium price. 600 is an equilibrium quantity. However, government sets a price at a different level, disequilibrium level. At any other price, different from equilibrium, there will be some disequilibrium in the market. Market will not clear. In other words, there will be a gap between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Let's have a look at this. This is the price, new price level. Price is equal to 200. Government decides to fix the price of wheat because it's a necessity product. They want to care for people with low income. They don't want them to overspend, things like that. It's quite common to fix price for basic necessities. Government frequently tries to interfere. However, as we've covered in the previous seminar, 10 Principles in Economics, we've learned that free market provides or guarantees the best allocation of resources. And whenever government tries to interfere and distort this functioning of the free market, there will be some issues and the total welfare will go down. This is an example of why. When price is equal to 200, there will be a gap between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Have a look. Quantity supplied will be shown by this red line, will be determined by this point. This is quantity supplied. This is our supply curve, red. And quantity supplied at 200 will be 400 units. There are 400 units on the market. This product is not particularly profitable, so there will be not many manufacturers who will be happy to work at this price, who will remain profitable at this low price. 400 tons will be supplied to the market. On the other hand, our demand curve, shown by this blue line, tells us that at this particular price level, there will be this quantity demanded. which is actually equal to about 675 as far as I can see. Let me just check. Yes, 675. This will be quantity demanded. In other words, there will be 675 consumers and only 400 products available. This is a deficit. There will be a deficit in the market or shortage of products, insufficient number of products to satisfy demand. And we can see this because there is a gap between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Similarly, you can see this gap in the table as well. If you move higher, so we fixed the price at 200 pounds. This is the new fixed price set by the government. When price is 200, we can see that there is a difference between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. It's a shortage, and this shortage is actually equal to 275 units. Here we have a shortage or deficit, that's the same word, describing the same concept, which is equal to the difference between quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Quantity demanded is 675, quantity supplied is 400 units, which means that we are 275 units short. This number of units will be demanded but not supplied. This is the shortage in the market. This is an amount we are missing from the market. So this will be a shortage of 275 tons. That's the difference. So any intervention in the market, as we've covered in the previous seminar, will lead to disequilibrium. It will lead to inefficient allocation of resources. Consumers won't be able to buy as much as they need. Market will not clear. Suppliers won't be able to shift all their products. Like here, market won't clear. There will be a deficit. Some customers will be unsatisfied. Any questions? No? Next week at the next seminar, we'll have more exercises based on deficits and shortages. But please pay attention to this exercise because you will get a question like this in your first assessment, definitely. Next question asks you to investigate the effect of government policy, because government policy is another important determinant of supply specifically. Taxes and subsidies, as we've covered in the previous lecture on supply, will shift supply curve. And this is an illustration that supply increases by 150 tons at all prices for whatever reasons. Maybe because government provided a subsidy, decided to subsidize this particular industry, right? As a result, supply increases. How this will change our supply? We simply add 150 tons at each and every price level. And our new quantities supplied, will now be equal to these new numbers: 375, 450, 550, 650, all the time plus 150, and so on. 750, 900, 1,000, 1,450. So these are our new numbers. And now we need to identify how this will change our graph. The graph will shift to the right. This was our demand, rather steep demand, rather flat supply. This is how it looked like. This was our original equilibrium. Equilibrium price was 280 pounds. Equilibrium quantity was 600 units. And now our supply shifts by 500 units at each and every price. This is a horizontal shift to the right. New supply shifts to the right. The question is, how will this affect equilibrium? This shift is equal to 150 units, plus 150. However, equilibrium will not increase, equilibrium quantity will not increase by 150 units. Why is that? Because the original equilibrium was shown by point A, and new equilibrium is shown by point B. And the difference between point A and point B is less than 150 units. Do you see this? This gap, this distance is 150. But in fact, we move to the right, the actual quantity increases by only that amount. In reality, our equilibrium moves to here. So total quantity sold in the market will not increase by 150. It will still increase, but by a smaller amount. By how much? We can see from the table. If we plot the new supply curve according to scale, we will be able to see it. We will see it from the graph. However, it's just easier to analyze just the numbers because we don't have that much time left. So now we are comparing these numbers, demand, and new supply. And let's see if they're the same or not. They're still different. Here, the quantity demanded is still bigger. So here, for these prices shown in green, we still have a shortage or a deficit because quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. If we look at this part of the graph of the table, we will see that quantity supplied is higher. So there is a surplus here on the market. Quantity demanded is less than quantity supplied, right? For example, 600 versus 750 and so on. Quantity demanded is smaller than quantity supplied. There is a surplus of products on the market. And in fact, there is a single price where quantity demanded is equal to new quantity supplied. This is our equilibrium when quantity demanded is just equal to quantity supplied, and it happens when the new equilibrium price is equal to 240, right? So here our equilibrium will be 240, price drops, more products available, they become less scarce, and as a result they become cheaper, right? And quantity now increases to 650 units. So this is our new equilibrium. And as you can see here, there will be 50 additional units sold. Equilibrium quantity increases from 600 to 650 plus 50 units, not plus 150. Supply curve shifts by more. Okay, any questions here? Okay, that's fine. So change in price, minus 40 pounds, drop from 280 to 240 pounds. Change in quantity, plus 50 units, from 600, which we used to sell before, to 650. This is how you tackle this question. So these are my notes, and of course the nicely written solutions are available in a separate file, which is this one. So it's also available on Moodle. You will be able to check it. And there are some other questions here which I recommend that you try in preparation for your assessment. Complete this at home, check your answers against what's available on Moodle, and ask me questions next time. Please make sure that you do all the lectures, because next seminar will be your final seminar before your first assessment. Okay? Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day.